Animations are one of those things that can be easy to overdo, but when done well, they can enhance the user experience of a site and actually help tell the story better on a page. But when they're done bad, they can feel like they're just getting in the way and disrupting the experience. I typically think of animations last when I start a project. I typically start with content and messaging, then design, then animations in that order. But I want to walk you through 3 animation types that I like to use to help enhance the experience of a page and help tell the story better. The 3 different types of animation triggers I like to work with are on-load animations and scroll-triggered animations and scroll-linked animations. It all depends on what you're trying to achieve. You don't need all 3. And just because you can animate something doesn't mean you have to. But I want to walk through some examples on how I like to use all 3 of these. Unload animations are the first thing a user sees. So you want to keep these quick and simple because you don't want to keep the user waiting too long before you show them any content. And if you delay things too much, the site can start to feel broken or slow to load. So you want to make sure you get to the point quickly with these. And if you're animating a CTA or something important that they need to interact with, you don't want to delay that too long, because if that's the purpose they're going to your site, why do you want to make them wait for that? So I want to start by showing you some examples on this Squarespace template that I've been working on lately. And this is the on-load animation. So when I refresh the page, you'll see how I animated it in. So I'll show you what that looks like again. To show you how I did the on-load animations here on this page, I can show you with this first image as an example. So if we go into the editor here and select the edit icon, there's an animation tab here where all of these animation triggers live. And you'll see there's this on appear trigger. And you can add as many triggers as you want. So you'll see I have an on appear effect here. In this start tab, there's 2 tabs. There's start and timing. Start is where you want the starting position of this element to be, or what the state is before the page is loaded. So you can see I'm offsetting it by 40 pixels. You'll see the timing here is the duration. So I have it at 0.9 seconds. You can also delay it here. This edge here and past this screen, this is set to 0 so that it appears right away. I'll get into these settings a little bit more once we get into the scroll triggers, but I have these set so that as soon as the element is on the page, it will trigger the animation. But the elements that you can animate are the opacity, the rotation. So if you wanted to kind of rotate in, you could do that. There's also the scale here. So if you wanted to be a little bit smaller or larger before it comes in. The offset I'm already messing with, which is X, but you could also do the Y, so it could come in from the top or the bottom. So skew gives you the option to skew on the X axis, or you could do it on the Y axis. You could do a combination of both also. Scroll triggered animations play once a user gets to a certain point on the page. And the way I like to set these up is I like to have them only play once so that they're not feeling repetitive and fire every time the user scrolls over that section again. And the timing for them is really important. If you fire them off too early, then they're just going to get missed. But if you wait too long, then they might distract from the content that you're actually trying to get the user to focus on. So the scroll trigger animations are the ones that only fire once. If I scroll down on this page, you'll see that this first headline just pops in from the left here. If I scroll back up and come back down, you'll see it doesn't animate again. And I followed that same pattern with the image here. If I go back up, they don't play again. I did that intentionally because I didn't want it to be overwhelming. I feel like once you show that once, that's enough for an animation like that. Since I'm also using scroll linked animations on this layout, I didn't want to have too much movement going on as you scroll through the page. I'll go ahead and walk through the scroll triggered animations here to show you how those are done. So with text elements, it's a little bit different from images. With images, when you click the edit button, the animation tab shows up. But for text, you have to click the style background icon, and then you'll see the animation options pop up here. The way these scroll triggers happen, they are actually on appear triggers. You can see that the offset here is -40 on here. So you can see that's where it's starting off to the left. But what's different here is the timing. We have the duration set, but we have it triggering when it passes 20% of the screen. And what that means is when the element gets into 20% from the bottom of the screen, that is when the trigger happens. So if you set this higher to 50%, then it wouldn't trigger till it gets to about the middle of the screen. So let me show you what that would look like. So you can see it's still not triggering. And once we get about halfway, that's when it triggered. So that's what that percentage means. I believe there's other options for triggering where you can trigger it by the block, what I'm doing. You can also do it by section. So when the section that this is in reaches a certain percentage, you can have it trigger an animation on this element also. So there's a couple options there. And you can also set the edge from the top, or you could set it to the middle or the bottom. Right now I have it set to the top. So what that means is the very top of this, when that reaches 20%, that's when the animation is going to happen. Scroll linked animations are tied directly to the scroll bar of a browser. So they're going to play every time someone scrolls through that section of your site. Think of the parallax effect is the most common use of this animation technique. You want to make sure you use it sparingly though, because if you animate too many elements at once, it can start to feel laggy and sometimes overwhelming, and it can affect performance also. So I'm going to walk through the scroll linked animations on this page. You'll notice when I go down to the next section here, I have a scroll trigger animation here, but here's where I start introducing some of the scroll link animations. And it's the numbers that are coming in from the left to right. You'll notice if I scroll back up, those swipe away again. And just to go through the rest of the template, you can see I also have some other scroll triggers here that play once. And then also the same pattern from before where I have a scroll trigger bringing this headline, and then there's scroll linked numbers here. You'll notice that this doesn't trigger anymore, but there is a little bit of scroll animation, and this is more of a parallax effect with the image here, where it just scrolls at a little bit of a slower speed, and then you'll see these scroll animations will play again. And then the last linked animation I have is this box that surrounds the contact form. So anytime you come down here, it's always going to appear. It's pretty similar to the scroll trigger animation. So since this is a text element, it's going to be in this background style icon. And when you click on animation, the trigger is just different. This is where we're going to utilize the on scroll trigger. So what you'll see here is, in addition to start, there's also end. So you see kind of how these transitions all build off each other. Once you learn the first one, it kind of gives you a little bit of a foundation to go on to the next one, the scroll triggers. And once you get a hang of scroll triggers, then the scroll linked animations kind of become a little bit easier to comprehend. So the difference here is we have the starting state and we also have the ending state. So we can have the ending state be something completely different from what we have positioned on the screen currently. You can see my starting state is just moving it from -24, and I have my opacity to 0. So that's why they're fading in and to the right. But the difference with scroll linked animations is the timing. You have a start and an end. This has similar options to the scroll triggers. You still have block or section that you can animate by. And what this has is enters, leaves, scrolls, passes, and custom. Honestly, I only use scrolls. I haven't really messed with any of these other ones, but scrolls seems to get me what I'm looking for with scroll linked animations. So this start percentage is where you want the start to begin animating, and this end percentage is where you want the end state to finish animating. So I'm animating these between 40 and 50% of the screen. So roughly when it gets to around the middle of the screen. So if I wanted to start these a lot sooner, say when that bottom element crosses like the 20% threshold of the screen, which would be roughly around here, I can move this down to 20 and you'll see this is actually going to make the animation appear to be a lot slower. So you'll see it comes in sooner, but it's not fully complete because we need to get to that 45% mark until it fully finishes. So these can get tricky because those percentages are going to be tied to your timing. The closer those percentages are together, the faster things are going to animate. So the wider that percentage window is, the slower things are going to animate. So it can get a little tricky to wrap your head around, but playing around with it and just kind of doing trial and error will help you understand it a little more. So these are the 3 animation types that I like to use. There's definitely more out there. There's hover animations and click animations, but I found that these are typically the 3 that I always go to when I'm trying to enhance the experience of a page. If you're just getting started though, I would select just one and get comfortable with that. Once you're comfortable with that, pick another one and then see how you can get those two to work together and enhance the experience on a page you may be working on. Because at the end of the day, it's a website. And what matters is if people can use it or not. That's the bar.